I build relationships that are authentic. And yeah, look, that number's wonderful, that 25,000. How many of those are authentic people that I know and interact with on a regular basis? Honest answer is I don't know. What I do know is when I go to events, I get talking to a lot of people. They introduce me to people. I'll reach out, connect with them on LinkedIn. And then when the time's right, start to leverage that. But always making sure that anytime you're leveraging it, it's a win-win.
Morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone and where you're joining us from the world or watching on demand following the session today. My name is James Sundon, Chief Evangelist and co-founder of R.E.P.R.E.S.E.N.T. I'm joined today by the titan of networking, Phil Hobden. Phil, how are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm very, very well. What I love was the conversation we were having beforehand, where both of us failed to realise that on the promo for this, we'd used your pre-married name, and literally, and so when you said James Sundon, I'm like, who? Oh, you. I'm still adapting to it, right?
Do you know what it is? 2 weeks into marriage, two weeks in today. So I'm celebrating my 2-week anniversary with you, Phil. So it's absolutely awesome. I think, yeah, you say it's a mistake. Maybe I didn't intentionally. Who knows, like where my mindset was going through, right? I think first things first, though, mate. Let's have a discussion about that shirt that you're wearing. Because I mean, can you just tell us a little bit about that shirt firstly?
It was a request. It was a request. So Anto turned around to me and said, "Why don't you wear that shirt on the webinar today?" And I was like, "No." And then I was like, "Yeah, go on then." So this is my roller derby announcing shirt. This is my stand out in a crowd shirt. This is my, if I'm at a networking event, I know I'd never wear this to a networking event, but it's a gloriously colourful shirt, right? And I'm in a spectacularly good mood today, so I figured it was the right time to crack this out just for you, sir, just for you.
I mean, wow. Like I'd blush. I'd probably smile a little bit more, but I'm now approaching 33. So justifying the loss of elasticity in my face is not really there so much, mate. But however, let's jump in and let's crack on. So getting everyone back to the how-to series, and today we're going through how to get away with networking. See what I did there? I know you loved it, right?
Very smart.
You are a titan, as I introduced you. You've got circa 25,000 followers on LinkedIn alone. Wow.
I mean, thank God that is LinkedIn, because if that was in real life, that'd be really weird, right?
Just what, 25,000 people following?
People just following me. I can, like on the average day, I can't get 2 people to follow me to the shops in the right way. So it's like
that's a hell of a conga line, I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm just going to make a quick note: Guinness Book of Records, longest conga line. Yeah, just get Phil's mates around.
Anyone that's listening here that has access to Midjourney, please do an image of me with 25,000 followers doing the conga. Sorry.
That's like doing the Congo, even, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't pick up on that.
I knew you were hoping I wouldn't pick up on that, and that's the exact reason why I said it. Maybe it's for today, but I want to know what the Congo is. Like, what do you do when you do the Congo, right? But however, moving on. Phil, for those who don't know you, I guess you've had a very varied, very experienced background, but something and roles that you've had, including most recently now, and obviously recently joining Silverfin, your notoriety and your way to be able to build relationships is something I'm keen for our audience to pick up upon, right? Our main audience today are both vendors, so similar to me or you within that space, but also for accountants, right? So I think as we go through this, let's make sure that both different categories or verticals as per our audience get the best impression as to how they can accelerate networking with clients and turning peripheral relationships, connections on LinkedIn, whatever else it might be, into real business relationships. I guess starters off, you've worked a lot of different places, you've got different companies, different organizations. Your strategy and how you go about winning work from connections, Phil. Take us through it.
Do you know what? That's a big question, right? And we could probably talk about it for a couple of hours. We don't have that, so I'll boil it down into something a lot smaller. And I think ultimately for me, it starts with authenticity, right?
Mm,
Like it starts with building authentic relationships and knowing when to leverage them and how to leverage them.
mm,
And I think that's the mistake some people make, is that, especially when you move jobs or move roles a few times, the first thing you do is you go, right, who are my top 30 people I can talk to? And you message them, and it's quite an inauthentic way of doing it, right? You're only in that relationship for what you can get out of it. For
mm,
me, I build relationships that are authentic. And yeah, look, that number's wonderful, that 25,000. How many of those are authentic people that I know and interact with on a regular basis? Honest answer is I don't know. What I do know is when I go to events, I get talking to a lot of people. They introduce me to people. I'll reach out, connect with them on LinkedIn, and then when the time's right, start to leverage that. But always making sure that anytime
mm,
you're leveraging it, it's a win-win. And there's a
mm,
great example of reaching out to someone this week that works in a top 50 firm in the UK.
mm,
And I know that they're not using us as a product, as a business. I know who
mm.
they are using, and I know why they should be using us. So I just reached out to them and said, look, fancy, are you going to Accountex? Fancy a coffee? And while we're there, we could probably have a chat about kind of what your plans are in regards to Silverfin. And she
Yep.
came straight back to me within 5 minutes. And this is a chief financial person at a big business, big firm, right? And came back to me in 5 minutes and went, yeah, cool, let's do that. Now, there's a lot of authenticity in that, right? Like I haven't reached out and said, well, I'm going to try and sell to you, or it's like, actually, I just want to find out what you're doing,
Mm,
why you're doing it, what your plans are, how we might fit into that. But more importantly, I actually really like you as a person, and I've got a different t-shirt on, so let me talk to you about that, and let's share a coffee. And that's kind of the crux of what I've done throughout my career, right? It's
mm.
timing, it's authenticity, and it's appreciating. And I'm going to say this for Marcus, who I know is listening in, that your network is also your net worth. So,
Oh,
as a beer, I owe
oh,
Marcus now for that one.
oh, oh, oh. I can't really
That's
say
not
anything
my line,
else.
by the way. That's someone else's, but
I love that. Like you credited Marcus, great guy, really cool guy. Caught up with him pre-DAS recently. I had a good little bit of a chit chat and catch up, and yeah, got seen for like 20 seconds at DAS because we're all so busy, right? Let's, I guess, unpack a little bit there on what you've said. So, number one thing that sticks out to me there is the right time. So, the right time in order to approach a potential prospective partner, business client, whatever else it might be, right? The right time to approach them after that peripheral relationship has been built up. Can you quantify us what that right time is and indicators that you'd look for, Phil?
yeah. So it's hard to quantify, right? Because timing is such a weirdly natural and unnatural thing. Now you can
Mm,
force timing, but ultimately it is what it is. I tend to find that. So a good example for me would be if you look back at previous DASs, when it was at the Tottenham Stadium, and downstairs you'd have we were all drinking in the very long bar, and you run into someone. Go. Oh,
longest bar in
yeah,
Europe.
longest
Longest bar
bar
in
in Europe,
Europe.
longest bar in Europe, and you'd be talking to someone, and in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, how can I leverage this relationship for both of us, right? So it's a win-win.
Mm,
And so I picked up probably there 3 or 4 people to interview on a podcast. I said, oh, Jim, we haven't spoken for a while. Would you like to come on a podcast and chat about what you're doing and everything else? And they're like, yeah, of
mm,
course I would. I'd love to chat and share my story.
mm,
That's a great timing, right? It's in a casual environment, like everyone is kind of there for a specific networking reason, to get to know each
mm,
other, to get to know other people. Equally, when you're talking to people and they say, oh, we're really struggling with this, for me, my job is to say, oh, hold on, actually, I know James is like an expert at that. Let me make an introduction to James, or let me make an introduction to Marcus, or let me make an introduction to whoever. And then,
mm,
yeah, if you're in the same room with them, I'll quite often go and grab that person and bring them, or vice versa, right? And make a physical introduction and do like a
mm,
handoff and say, hey, look, James, this is Marcus. I know I was talking to Marcus, and he was telling me that he was struggling with X, Y, and Z. I know this is
mm,
something you guys do really well.
mm.
thought it'd be good for you to have a chat. If I can't do that in person, I'll do it over LinkedIn, and I'll step out of that conversation. For me, the right time is focusing on generally someone else's needs, and in my mind, that then gives me it gives me an implied permission to go back at some point down the line and like not leverage that relationship, but be a bit bolder in saying, hey, look, you know, any chance I could ask you a question, or yeah, if you've got 5 seconds, I've just got this thing I just need an answer to. So I guess I try to put the other people and make sure it's making sure it's a win-win, and that's what the timing's about, right? It's not just about giving, it's not about taking, it's about being able to give as well and help that person, and then at some point it gets paid forward or paid backwards.
That's it's a really cool point. Like you've got a lot of experience in this field, so managing partnerships, right? So I want to approach this from vendor to vendor, building those partnerships. You know, those kind of partnerships that we say, oh, we're in partnership, and then nothing ever happens and there's no revenue made out
It's a
of
logo
it.
on a website, right? It's a logo on a website, and that's what most of them are.
Exactly. Like, so the vast majority. But I also want to approach it from accountant to accountant, right? So looking at that from both ways. A lot of people will look at, oh, we want to have a partnership with you. You've got a cool brand name. You've got a really nice shirt. You know, you stand out in the crowd, right? Obviously keeping it current, Phil, right? But a lot of people will approach it in that way and say, let's have a sit down, let's talk about partnership, and let's try and do this and make it happen. Actually, sometimes in business, the way that you are beneficial to that relationship and how that positively affects on you is by connecting two people together and getting the hell out of the way in line with a mutual goal between the two. So actually for vendors, don't approach a partnership to say, I want a strategic partnership with this person. Create a use case for that partnership first by introducing them to somebody within your network that might not be on their radar, where their solution fixes the problem that somebody in your network has got, right? Well, really, really important.
In fact, I did exactly that at DAS. I was talking to our VP of marketing who was over, and she was like, oh, we want to do this project and we want to partner with someone for that. And I was like, well, actually, when people tend to do that, they tend to partner in a certain direction with certain companies. I'm like, gee, I know these guys are really interesting. They're really good at kind of promoting stuff. So I literally walked her over and said, look, X meet Y. We're trying to solve this problem. I know you guys are really good at this. Let me leave you two to talk, and then hopefully you'll find some synergy. Now, I also know that company's keen to strike up a relationship with us as a business. We're keen to do something with them. Yep. If you're going to base it just waiting on a technical partnership or something like that, it's going to, you know, these things take forever. So actually, what I've done there is I've seeded the first gem of a relationship with that business that we can then build on, but also it keeps that relationship fresh. It keeps it evolving. There's conversation that's going to happen around that. So it also gives me a little bit more time to work on other bits and pieces around that as well. So it's kind of, it's brought me kudos with their brand. It's brought me kudos internally. And it also gives me the opportunity to kind of give myself a bit more runway, because I now know something is happening in that field.
Love it. Brilliant. From an accounting perspective, accountant to accountant, right? So you are, let's say, you are an accountant, you've gone to Digital Accountancy Show, you are there by yourself. You might have one of your team there with you, right? But you've gone there by yourself, you're not a vendor, looking at it from a completely different sphere. You've got a network of people around you, other accountants, who actually specialize within different areas outside of yours, right? You might even be, and we've had a few questions through before the webinar, Phil, you might even be, not like I am or other people might be, you're an introvert. You're not an extrovert. Going up to somebody, instigating that conversation is a really difficult thing to do, especially if you're in a room alone by yourself, right? How would you suggest people go about approaching that to be able to not just absorb great content that's delivered from speakers at events like DAS, but also how to be able to build meaningful relationships with peers in way of being able to turn those into working relationships?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess my tip would be, don't try and do it at the event, weirdly. Okay. Like, before the event is a great time. Like, like if you've ever been to like DAS this year, and you said it earlier, right? Like it's moments of conversation. It's like 1,000 micro conversations all happening over 2 days. Whether you're at the Digi Games that John's organised, or you're at the drinks afterwards, or you're grabbing lunch or grabbing a coffee, or sometimes even when you're popping to the loo, right? It's those micro conversations with people that you have in passing, and everyone, you smile, but we've all done it, right? Where you walk past someone and you walk into the toilet or walk out the toilet as someone's walking in that you want to speak to, and you end up having that awkward conversation across the door. When so it's micro conversations, so it's quite hard to forge that first relationship. But there are so many great accountancy communities out there, and networks and groups, that sometimes you're saying to someone, "Hey, who else is going? It'd be great for me just to kind of, it'd be great for me to kind of team up with someone that can kind of that fancy walking around, or someone that can introduce me to a few people." And I think that's probably the best way to do it, because otherwise you do have that, people do tend to go to these things together. There are some people that will go alone, but if you can kind of nail that beforehand, or do you know what? Sometimes reach out to vendor friends and say, actually, I'm going. Do you know anyone that might be good for me to chat to, or kind of spend some time with? Because I'll probably know actually, well, firm your size, you might want to hang around with this guy. I'll make an intro. And I know that you've got similar challenges as well, so you might be able to have that conversation. So again, it's going back to that win-win. It's utilizing my network to help someone else develop their network. Although I think maybe they should just maybe go with like red wristbands or something for people that solo, so you can like, you can go, "Hi, I need a friend," and they go, "I need a friend too."
We all need friends. We all need friends, and it's important, and it's togetherness, and regardless of what you might think before going into a conversation, before going into an event, we're all cool people. We all want to see each other do well. Like, it's there. Once you get that, realize and understand that, and that people are just people. We're all exactly the same. We all eat, poop, sleep. We all do the same things.
We really do.
Regardless. It's very important. I think points to pull out of that, Phil, if I may. So point number one, not your exact words, but I would say don't network in bathrooms. I think
it's
probably
really terrible idea. It's very awkward. You've got to know someone quite well for that one. Like me and you, we could do that. That'll be fine.
You say that, but there was a particular situation at DAS where I was going in to use the toilet, and somebody tried to start a conversation, and I was like, "Hey man, just a quick one. I'm going to pee myself, so I'm going to hold it there. Also, I don't want to have a chat with you in a bathroom. Don't want to be weird, but just letting you know." And we caught up. We caught up afterwards, and it was cool. And we've got a relationship, and we've had a meeting. Second point, I love the point you mentioned there. And I'm expecting every account manager for a particular software vendor to now get bombarded saying, "Hey, can you introduce me to a client like this person?" It's a great way to look at it. And I'm really glad you mentioned it, Phil, because a vendor is more than likely going to have a significantly larger network of accountancy practice than an accountancy practice will do. Before an event, is there anyone you can introduce me to? I'm coming here solo. It'd be great to meet some like-minded people. Anyone you could introduce me to? Awesome. A vendor could also respond to that by putting something together for clients pre the event, right? So actually having that introduction and network all built up around them as, the conduit for that conversation, right?
And don't forget, sorry, I was going to say, don't forget, these events never start the day of the event, right? Like I mentioned the Digi Tools thing, the Digi Games thing earlier, right? Account tax is coming up. If you are slightly socially unsure of these kind of things, right? Being in a room with 100 other people, like putting into teams, throwing axes, you'll make connections and you'll start conversation. And they're such a relaxed group with so many like nice core people that are always at these events, but loads of people that come in. It's a great way to kind of start to get to know people. And there's a good mixture of accountants, tech, vendors, thought leadership people. So it's a great place to start to make those connections. So I reckon anything like that I think is really good, because anytime you can do something in a relaxed environment with other cool people, you're going to start to build and make connections.
Fantastic, mate.
And you get to throw axes at them, with them, sorry, with them, with them.
Why do I feel like there should have been multiple disclaimers? Like,
You
I love a
know,
disclaimer as much as the next man. Like, I know you dropped John's name in there a couple of times, right? So one of a good friend of mine, one of my co-founders at R.E.P.R.E.S.E.N.T, John Toon, he's an absolute party animal. He can't manage a group of DJs to save his life because I've now taken over that helm. But he's great at putting he's great at putting networking events and socials together. Accountex is one of the things that he's doing before Accountex this year. And as a disclaimer, please do not throw axes at people, however much you
bad
might want.
networking, very bad networking.
Bad networking.
But apparently playing Squid Games with people is absolutely fine.
Yes. Did you walk into a wall and face plant at all? Because I certainly did, and I think it's actually on video.
Terrible at it. Yeah.
Not the proudest moment. You've touched on there, Phil. We had quite a few questions through before, and a lot of them were talking about, in so many terms, what's the single bit of advice that you would give to somebody that's an introvert, right? I know you've shared there, when building that networking relationship and might be hesitant or even nervous to go and instigate that conversation. I know you've said about vendors having that outreach. You said about attending pre-event shows. There's no events. There's a local coffee morning. It's not something where other vendors are necessarily there. What advice would you give to somebody that's an introvert to be able to go and initiate that initial conversation?
Firstly, I would remind them that they're not the only introvert in that room. And even people that aren't obviously introverts have introvert tendencies. This is going to be really hard to believe, and no one's going to believe this. There is a degree of me that is quite introverted, right? I will do a day at DAS. I'll do the morning, the evening. I'll stand on stand talking to people. I'll hand out croissants. I'll allegedly dress in a silver outfit all day long. Wasn't me. But at the end of the day, like, I then have to lock myself in a quiet room and kind of recharge my batteries, right? So you'll be surprised how many people really are introverts. And when you know that everyone's feeling a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit awkward, actually, that kind of makes it. It's that old acting adage, isn't it? Imagine everyone in the nude. Don't do that at DAS. But like, it's that thing of it. Everyone is the same as you, right? Like, most people are nervous about these things. If I'm going to a small networking event, I'm equally a little bit hesitant. I'll sometimes sit outdoors in a car for like 5 minutes and I'll listen to a song. So this is probably my thing, and this is probably the thing I do more than anything, right? Like, when I went to the and when I was announcing the roller derby this past weekend, I know I'm going to be stood up in front of 100 people. There's going to be people on track that know so much more about the game than me, and I've got to entertain everyone, be sensible, and kind of impart some of the rules. It's quite nerve-wracking. So I'll sit in my car for 10 minutes beforehand and I'll listen to some really pumping music, generally something super cheesy. I'll probably listen to a little bit of the Hamilton soundtrack because that's a great one to get you up and going, right? Like,
your call.
Hey, right. And actually for me, that puts me into that mindset. So having the mindset that you're not alone, having the mindset that other people are like that as well. And I always think about the last time you did this and it went well. Right? So just remember back and go, actually, I felt like this the last time I did this, and I got X out of it, or I got Y out of it. And then that just instantly just focuses that mindset in. And then go in and shake someone's hand. And the moment you shake someone's hand and say hello, it's amazing how all of that just goes. And then you're in the room and conversation comes natural because we're humans, and humans have over many, many hundreds and thousands of years developed the ability to talk and have conversation. So it's not anything new. You're not breaking any new ground. So the moment you start talking, people will talk back to you, and then you'll just go, and everything will be fine again.
I love it. That's an in-person, from an online perspective.
Oh, you're screwed. There's no way of not feeling.
just log out of it, delete your account. There's no point.
Just lock out. Like, no camera, no microphone. Like, online stuff is really hard, right? Like, I've hosted online training stuff, and you've got people there that might not necessarily feel comfortable, that might not want, and that that physical barrier is so much harder. When you have a
Mm,
physical barrier, it's so much harder. And you know, it does change it a lot. I don't love networking online
mm,
and stuff like that. I think it's a human game, right? It's a human to human game. I think, you know, during the pandemic, we learned that no matter how hard we tried
mm.
online, it wasn't until we got back out in the real world and we saw people. And that's ironically, we talk about Das was the first event post lockdown, right? It was one of the first events in the UK, not even in our industry. And I remember we got those little wristbands that said green, I'll hug anyone, amber, I'm not sure, red, stay away from me.
Did you
I
see the
put an
black
amber
one
one
as
on.
did you see the black one as well? That was open for kisses. Did you not get one?
Oh no, I missed that.
You didn't get the option. Fair
I
enough.
put an amber one on, and within 2 seconds, I was hugging people. Like I was like,
Mm,
actually, no, this is what I need.
yeah.
So look, online is a lot harder, and but the same applies, right? Like, you know, a good online host will bring people in and facilitate that meeting really well, and they'll kind of draw people in and kind of go, hey, you know, James, what's your opinion? Marcus, hey, you know, what do you think about that? And I think it
Mm,
needs a really good host to bring people in.
mm.
So it's a lot more difficult online, I'll be honest. But face to face, I think face to face is where networking really should exist. I think online should have a different word for it.
There's a lot of different theories and opinions depending on who you speak to. I've seen stuff, you know, in this last week to 10 days, I've seen things of LinkedIn is not for sales. LinkedIn is for marketing. It is to influence that peripheral relationship and to remind people about who you are and this potential person you could be working with, right? I think personally, a gentler approach is definitely that for social media. Like nothing, as a potential buyer, nothing turns me off more than, hey James, let me talk to you about accounts payable. Like
Yeah,
that's no discredit on accounts payable because you know it's a really important part of process within finance. But that instant go to cool, hey, there you go. Other people, it's really easy to tell that that peripheral relationship has been built up as part of a cadence, and that cadence is, "Hi, let me say something nice about you. Let me send something like a week later just to check in, make sure you're okay. Then let me just absolutely unload on what we do from a business perspective." Right? I think if you are going to use it as a sales tool from a social media aspect, do so, but do so slightly more gentle than you necessarily would initially think to do. Right? Really,
it's
really
really
integral.
hard. Like it's really hard on LinkedIn and places like that to be human. And
Mm,
so when you were talking about networking, I was thinking more about like online networking. When you talk about
mm,
kind of LinkedIn and networking like that,
mm,
I think the interesting thing is the rule I always follow is 80% of your content should be personal, 20% should be professional. And what I mean
mm,
by that is 80% should have a story, should bring
mm,
something to life, should sell you as an individual and who you are. And then
mm,
people will gravitate towards that. And then if you drop the occasional posting about a webinar you're doing for work or something else,
mm,
people relate to it a lot better. I think it's so, I think that I love LinkedIn more now than I
mm,
ever have because
mm,
now it's full of humans doing business,
mm,
whereas before it was full of businesses and professionals doing business. And there's a distinct line because look, let's be honest, humans buy humans, right?
mm,
Like, so it's very one way. When you have like that two-way networking online, great. When you have that kind of one-way networking and you've just got to get out. It's a really hard balance. There are some people out there. Francesca does it fantastically. She's brilliant at balancing that human. Ariona is another one that does it really well, where you understand the person, you understand the reason for doing
mm,
stuff. So therefore, you go, well, actually, if I was buying, I'd buy from you. In fact, I'll talk about this. I'm talking about this at Accountex again with Rachel, Francesca, Stuart. We've got a panel about this, and I think it's really interesting that you can turn
mm,
online and networking and that online into money and into business
mm,
and into revenue.
mm,
But you have to do it from a human perspective. And that's when people really, my best post I've ever done is when I've been vulnerable or open up or been human. And that's the kind of stuff that people really relate to. And then they know you, and then you have that ability to reach out and talk to them engage with them, and that's when the business comes from it.
I love it, Phil. And obviously, we've known each other for a while. I'll add friends in there as well, not just acquaintances or anything like that, right? Maybe it's reciprocal, maybe it's
no,
not.
no,
I don't
no,
care.
yeah.
Hey, your call.
No,
Your call.
I'm down. Hey, we've spent I would say we spent time in a hot tub together, but that's not actually strictly true. We never actually made that one.
No, we didn't. We didn't quite make it to the hot tub,
We
but
didn't
we
quite
did
make
spend
it.
time together with just for the record, like 30 other
your wife is
specialists.
now your wife's now listening to this, going, James, do we need to have a conversation later?
Listen, hey, she doesn't judge. So listen, that's all cool, but thank you for your consideration. We'll go to one final question because we're almost coming to time here, Phil, right? I want to approach this one purely from a vendor's perspective. And I want to approach it around what is the strategy that you should be adopting at events to make sure that the people that come to see you, the leads, the opportunities, the prospective clients, to make sure that they go through and make sure that they really turn up for that next meeting and that next interaction.
Really good question. Start with understanding them, right? Like I listened to a sales call the other day, and it was 95% the salesperson talking and 5% the prospect. It should always be the other way around. So when someone comes up, and this comes from Nelson Da Silva, Nelson always said this to me, and I think it's a great line. When someone comes up and asks you, understand, what do you do? I never answer. What I do is I turn around and go, no, first, tell me what you do. Tell me what you're here looking to do and why you've stopped. And when you start to understand what they're looking for and what their challenges are and what they're trying to achieve, then you can start talking to about what you offer, how potentially that could address that problem. And sometimes I say, actually, do you know what? Also, there's X, Y, and Z here. You might want to go and look at them by comparison, because I'm super comfortable about what we have. And do you know what? If it's right for you, it'll be right. But equally, they're not silly enough to go, oh, you're the only one here that does that. I'm not going to go and look at anyone else, right? Clearly, there's other people that do what you do there. You're not a beautiful and unique snowflake, to quote Fight Club, right? Like, I know, right? It's harsh. It's harsh to know that you're not a beautiful and unique snowflake. But like, so there's other people. So it's like, look, this is what we do. This is how we solve it. There's some other people there as well. Go and speak to them as well. And then let's catch up afterwards and see what's the best solution for the challenges that you're facing. Because what you're doing there is you're being consultative, you're being human, you're listening, and you're not just selling your solution. You're saying, look, we're one of a few solutions. Get that whole picture and come back to me. And then if it's right for you, we'll talk. And timing, going back to one of the first points you made, right? Timing's everything. If people buy because they're at an event, chances are that's not going to stick, right? Like I've seen it many times. Someone signs up with a credit card on stand. 5 weeks later, they churn because they were taken up by the moment or the momentum or the free prosecco. It's one of those, right? I would rather
get them drunk and then get the credit card details. Phil Hobden.
I'd rather not, and I'd rather not sign them up on the stand. I'd rather them go away from the event, get that 360 view of what's in the market and why we're the best solution for them, and then come back and you can answer any questions. And if you're comfortable with what you've got and you've got a great product, a great team, you will win the day. And again, same with network, right? If you are authentic, if you're human, and if you build those connections where it's genuinely seen that those relationships are 360 and those people feel they can come to you at any point and you feel that you can go to them at any point, that's where networking becomes business opportunities and then becomes more and more and more. And that's kind of what I've always done. And some would say it's worked for me, and I'm sure others will say otherwise, but it's
do you know what it is? This is being the self-proclaimed taxman of the accountancy industry, right? sometimes you don't have to agree with everything that's been said, and to support that, but support it for good reasons. I agree with the very, very, very vast position of what you've just put across there, Phil. My only caveat with that is I would like to make sure that every single vendor, every single accountant has got not an overly corporate impact statement, but can, within a 10-second period, say what they do and how they do it and who they do it for.
Oh, the elevator
That,
pitch.
correct. The 10
Yeah.
seconds, here's what we do, here's how we do it. From a networking aspect, especially if you do something like speed networking, first thing out of your mouth, cool, that's what we do, great. Tell me about you. Tell me so I can find out if any of these areas are actually justifying your time spending it with me today. That's
Yeah, and there's,
that really nice to go into it, right?
I think there's validity in that, right? Like I think you've got to separate two things, right? You've got to separate
Mm,
someone coming to your stand because they want to find out more about what you do to
yep.
meeting someone in a room and networking with them, right? Like if someone's coming to your stand and they're looking at products and they're looking at what you do, for me, that's a conversation where I want to know more about them. And by the way, if the stand isn't obvious enough to tell them what you do that it's drawn them in, there's other problems that you have to face first. And there are a few of them, right, where you just go, huh, no idea. But you're right. A networking event, you can't beat a good 10-second elevator pitch, right? If you can't distill
Mm,
what you do down into 10 seconds
mm,
or 15 seconds, or if you waffle on like me, 20 seconds,
mm,
like you're doing yourself and the product a disservice because you should be able to do that. And I think
mm,
that's really, really important. And you're absolutely right. I think for a networking and those kind of events, that's really important. From a sales perspective, where people are coming to your events, just always be aware that what most people do is they pitch straight away.
mm,
And
mm.
actually, I'm like, I don't know if actually you're the right customer for us, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I going to waste 20 minutes of your time and then find out at the end of the day that we're not the right kind of thing? So I can do that by finding out more about the company. And also I'm really nosy and I love finding out what people do. And sometimes you come across someone, they're just like the most fascinating individual.
Mm.
And you're like, you just go down that rabbit hole.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I think the impact statement, use it as you see fit. Sometimes, generally, Phil, and wholeheartedly, like we've gotten so successfully since Digital Accountancy Show. There was over 200 people came to see us at the event. I think it's about 35, 36 meetings booked in so far.
Oh, amazing.
Myself and Ant are making the way through, right? Um, I give people the corporate line and then go, great, I'm not corporate. I hate that. Actually, tell me about your business and make a joke out of it, right?
Yeah.
I think anyone, accountant or vendor, like wholeheartedly, when clients come to us for commercial representation, right? So one of the ways that we work with clients is to grow and develop their business, providing staff in the UK to do that. The first question I ask people is, what are you better at than anybody else?
Nice.
And maybe you don't know that straight away. Maybe you don't know that now. Maybe that's what then forms your impact statement. But if you are trying to win business or referrals or whatever else it might be from another accountant, even from another vendor, if you can't tell them in a succinct way what you're better at than anybody else, because you actually believe it, you don't need a partnership. You don't need an introduction. You don't need somebody to commercially represent your business. You need a life coach. You need to know and honestly, wholeheartedly believe that what you do is better than anyone else. Otherwise, why would ever, if you don't know that yourself, why would anyone ever choose your service, right? That's my logic. That's my thoughts. Feel
I
free to
always think
rip it
that when
apart, Phil.
no, but I always think that when people apologize first, oh, I'm just an accountant. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not
Accountants are
just an
amazing.
accountant. You train for years to be able to do this. I can't do what you do. I'd never be able to do what you do. I'm nowhere near smart enough to be able to do that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I worked in sales for a long time. That's where people that generally fail at everything else go and find careers, right? Oh, I couldn't be an astronaut. I couldn't be a rocket science. I couldn't be I couldn't be a pilot. What can I do next? Sales? Yeah, perfect. I'll go and do that for a while. So you're not just an accountant, you're an accountant. The best accountants out there will save businesses, will grow businesses, will enhance the business, right? Like, if you can't go out and say, I'm an accountant, I'm bloody good at what we do. Like, it's why Rachel Harris and Strivex, I love listening to them and what they do, because they're very like, this is what we do, this is us, this is how we grow our customers, this is the successes that they've had. And you kind of go, that's amazing, right? Like, you're not just an accountant, you're a bloody rock star at this and what you do. You're a financial wizard, with all the sorting hats and everything. Yeah, like literally, if I was at a sorting hat and there was accountants, like you go to accountancy and like the sorting hat would go on about, you're going to be an accountant. You go to there. Mine would go, you're going to be, Griffin, no, Ravenclaw, or whatever the one that no one knows is, right? You know,
Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuff. That's it. I couldn't even remember Hufflepuff. That's the point, right? I would be Hufflepuff.
So just to summarize, Phil, don't network in toilets. Don't be Hufflepuff. Wear a flamboyant shirt.
Yeah.
Ask questions, not tell people. Understand them and take an interest in them. Really, really important. Give it a go. If you're a bit afraid in giving it a go, find somebody that can make it more softer and gentler for you, whether that be a peer, partner, a vendor within the industry. Bring it together. But ultimately, and the main point of this, Phil, which naturally we've got to, accountants, be proud of what you do.
Yeah.
Be bloody proud of what you do. There's not a subservient relationship between you and clients. You should feel empowered at what you do every day, as so should every single business and every single person. And what you do is transformational for a business, but hugely impactful for every member of staff and even the owners of that business from a personal standpoint. So you should be really proud of that.
If I was an accountant, I'd walk into every room like Robert De Niro at the beginning of Mean Streets, in slow motion to Jumping Jack Flash playing on the stereo, and I'd be like with a swagger, right? Like that would be how I would walk into every single room. I'm sure it was Robert De Niro. I'm sure it is. Anyway, that's how I'd walk into every single room, right? Like, if I was an accountant, I would be like, I am an absolute rock star, and every day I help people and I save people and I help businesses. Like, I'd constantly slow motion, smoke machine, Rolling Stones, the whole works, right? Because I'd be like, you know, I'm actually doing something proper in life and doing something important. And I think, you know, that boldness and confidence in yourself will help you get over what you do. And if you can walk in and say, I'm proud of what I do and I'm proud to be that person and be this, people will gravitate towards you because they want to find out more about it.
Love it. Which you said there, if you were an accountant, I mean, the only change there, Phil, is the fact you'd be an accountant as opposed to everything that you do now, right? Because that is how you enter and walk into the room anyway.
I walk in probably with steps on in the background rather than the Rolling Stones, and rather Robert De Niro. I'm more Joe Pesci.
There's so much that I wish I hadn't found out about you. But no, everyone, we will call it as time there. I was warned before hosting this session with Phil that it would go over. That person, Captain Kelly Dawn, was absolutely correct. Speaking of Captain Kelly Dawn, Captain Kelly will be my next guest, talking about how to get away with being yourself. Session I cannot wait to welcome into the stage for. But Phil, for now, thank you so much for joining me. An absolute pleasure. Really looking forward to seeing you soon, mate. Nothing to do with business, just think you're cool as hell. And yeah, for now, everyone, stay classy. Thanks for joining.